leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. This episode is very special. In partnership with ESCP Business School, I'll be giving the mic to students, our leaders of tomorrow, to discuss with incredible healthcare executives about their journeys and leadership beliefs. Reem, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Reem Aouchiche, specialized master's student at ESCP Business School in Paris, and I'm thrilled to be joined by an outstanding innovative leader, Jean-Jacques Bienaime, Chairman and CEO of BioMarin Pharmaceutical. Jean-Jacques joined BioMarin in 2005 as CEO and member of the board of directors, bringing with him over 25 years of experience in the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industries. Under his leadership, the market capitalization of BioMarin went from around $450 million in 2005 to approximately $14 billion in 2021. Before being the CEO of BioMarin, JJ held several senior management positions in the biotech industry, including CEO and chairman of Sangstat Medical Corporation and Genencor. JJ, it's such an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the Spread Love podcast. So I'd like to say a few introductory words. I would say as an alumni of ESCP, it's an honor to be here. While this may be somewhat obvious to the French listeners on the podcast here, others may be interested to know that my last name, Bienaime, means well-loved, which is very appropriate for, I guess, the Spread Love podcast. Actually, I understand that the name was a little research, and that was first recorded during the Middle Ages apparently in the southwest of France, bordering Spain, which is known as kind of the Pays Basque, now in the Qatar region, which has a rebellious tradition, which is probably in my genes. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. Maybe just a few more words before we get into the questions. So when I was in high school in Paris, I thought I wanted to study medicine, and actually I almost went to med school. Actually my sister went to med school, and I went to a few classes with her when I was in the last year of high school. And I realized that maybe at that time, there was no real biotech industry. The biotech industry was just starting. And I thought, well, if I go to med school, and my vision of it, I thought I would be a, office-based physician, somewhere in the country in France, and seeing patients day in and day out. And maybe I thought that might not quite be for me. But after a few years, I realized that my love of science and helping people could be combined in a career in the business of life sciences, of pharmaceuticals and biotech. And I would say that I love being in the life sciences business because of how we can help so many people on such a large scale. And that's what I wanted to do. I want to have an impact on a lot of patients around the world. And we certainly do at BioMarin because, with one approval of a transformational medicine, which is what we research, develop, and commercialize, we can dramatically change thousands of people's lives in just one swoop. And it's extremely rewarding to be able to do this.
Thank you so much for this introduction. JJ, you're one of the most influential people in the biotech world. What makes you the excellent leader you are today?
Oh, that's a difficult question because it's hard to tell sometimes, what makes you a good leader. I would say, first of all, although I went to SAP, I went to business school in the US, and I wanted to be in a biopharmaceutical business. But I wanted to start from not the very bottom, but I wanted to really start where I could get a deep understanding of what the business was about. And because of my background, since I didn't go to med school, I didn't have a PhD in biology. So I started actually in sales as a sales rep for a company, at that time that was called Ciba Geigy, in France, which is actually now Novartis. After they merged with Sandoz, it became Novartis. And so I started as a sales rep for 6 months, selling the products of Ciba-Geigy at that time, which were anti-arthritic drugs, antihypertensive drugs, antidepressants, and I got to understand, the business and interact right away with the customers. The physicians. I did not interact much with the patients at that time, but I interacted with the physicians, and I think that helped me all along my career. First of all, to understand the life of a sales rep in the pharma industry, the challenges that they face, and so that I could keep that experience, all my life as I went up the ranks into the pharma industry and the biotech industry, having this understanding of what it is to work on the front line of the business. So also I think if we look at the overall management style, I think it's caring. Is caring for the people you work for, and this is definitely something we do at BioMarin, and also being involved in a business where you are passionate about what you're doing. So I've been doing this for several decades now, and I don't remember waking up any morning saying, "Well, I got to go to work. What a drag," No, I always, and I think that's the case for most of the BioMarin employees, we want to be passionate about what we're doing, and we want to change the world. We want to make a difference for the patients, and we absolutely do. And that's why it motivates you to get up in the morning early at times and get going, and move forward the development of the products and the development of the company. So maybe some examples of, we can talk about my career, but and how it shaped basically, I guess who I am today. But to illustrate, some of the stuff that we are doing, maybe a few words about BioMarin, because I'm sure most of your listeners don't know that much about the company. The company is actually going to be celebrating its 25th birthday this year. It's 25 years old. So still relatively young company compared to the big pharma companies that have been around, some of them for over 100 years or more. So we're a relatively new company. And we are entirely focused so far, although the company is shifting a little bit its strategy, but the company was built on ultra rare disorders. Diseases where there are between 3,000 and 8,000 or 10,000 patients in the entire world. So extremely rare disorders, and unfortunately for the patients that have those, they're affected by the disorders. These are very severe, life-threatening, truly life-threatening disorders. The first product that we launched, Naglazyme, is for a disease called mucopolysaccharidosis 6, or MPS 6. That I'm not really certain none of the listeners here know that disease because it's so rare. But it's a very, they are very nice disorders which comes from the genetic mutation, and the patients cannot break down some proteins because there are some deficient enzymes in their body, and then they have accumulation of stuff in the tissues, and it affects their entire body and prevents them from growing, eventually makes them blind. So difficulty from the beginning of their lives, and before our products, they would die in their late teens, early 20s. So they would never get to college. And the parents were told, when unfortunately they were told they had a child with a kind of disorder, that they would pass away before they reached their 20 years of age. So this is the foundation of the company. So we a lot of biopharma companies say that they are patient-centric, but many of them are not really. We are truly patient-centric, to the extreme. And I'll talk about where the company is going now, because if you look at the core strength of the company, it's genetics, deep understanding of genetics and genomics, which allows us to develop product for rare genetic disorders. And we're going to continue to grow the company in genetic disorders, but going into larger disorders than the ultra-orphan drugs. Anyway, I would say one of the amazing things about working in rare disease biotech companies like BioMarin is that we get to know many of our patients by name. Actually, we have known some of our patients since they were little kids in clinical trials in elementary school. And now many of them are in college, believe it or not. Some of them are married, they have jobs. And as I said earlier, when these kids were diagnosed well over a decade ago, their parents were told that they probably wouldn't be here today. They would not go to college for sure, and they will, as I say, die in their early 20s. So I could show you pictures of this kind of patients 15 years ago when we launched our drugs and today, and it's night and day. I mean, you can tell already that the drug, just looking at the picture, has a major impact on those patients. And fortunately, most of them now are here today. And some of our patients, many of our patients have grown into amazing adults, and their stories are our stories and our inspiration. The name of BioMarin, by the way, comes from Marin County. So if you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, and I can see it from my window here, you go from San Francisco County to Marin County. So this is hence the name of the company, because it was started there. So our headquarters are in San Rafael, which is 25 minutes driving distance from the Golden Gate Bridge. But there we have a steel sculpture. It's a water jet cut sculpture in the shape of trees that is dedicated to our patients and also to the patients' advocacy groups. Actually, the sculpture is a symbol of our deeply rooted relationship with our patients. And it reminds us of our devotion to the individuals who inspire us to be the best of ourselves, you know. And so an interesting anecdote here, I mean, it's not a fact, that when we have patients and their families on campus, in our headquarters here, we generally hold what we call a love lock ceremony. So we engrave heart-shaped padlocks with a patient's name on one side and the words "unlocking tomorrows together" on the other side. So, and then they select a place on our tree of life sculpture. It's a pretty big sculpture, which is outside. And they put their lock. And they also, we give them a duplicate so they can take it home with them. So the trees today are filled with colorful love locks from years of ceremonies. And you can go on our website to see what it looks like. So actually, some of this origin has to do with Paris. The origin of the sculpture basically is indicative of our love to our patients. The installation was inspired by our patients, one of our patients named Isabel Bueso, who's from South America, and as well as the Pont des Arts in Paris. We understand it's a world-renowned architectural structure, which is filled with padlocks symbolizing a couple's unwavering love to each other. So we went to a sculptor called Gordon Huther. He's a renowned local sculptor in Northern California. He's an artist. And we worked with him before, and we challenged him to help us create our version of the love locks on the Pont des Arts in Paris. We showed him the heart-shaped padlocks, and we explained that we wanted to be able to put them on a sculpture. So now we have an ironclad representation of the love that BioMarin has for our patients. And then I would say, in terms of leadership, I mean, there are books written about, you know, leading from the heart and that kind of stuff. So obviously, this is something that I believe in. I mean, I believe that people want to do good. People want to be successful. If they are put in the right conditions and environment, they will be successful. Maybe it's a long answer to your question, but I'm sure there will be other ones.
Thanks for sharing. It's so powerful, and this is exactly why I wanted to join the biopharma industry. And in an interview earlier this year, led by the CEO magazine, you stated that you are not afraid of making mistakes and that you believe mistakes have been essential to your success at work. Can you tell us about times when you have encountered difficulties as a leader, times when your management method did not necessarily work?
So I think it's Napoleon who said success is a succession of failures. But obviously everybody makes mistakes. And actually you do learn way more from your mistakes then you learn from your successes, because sometimes you're successful, sometimes you don't really know why, or what was the root cause of your success. But failures, you generally have a better understanding of what happened. So all in all, my career, I've made mistakes, and try to. It did have a big impact on me, and so I can start with actually a very simple, somewhat down to earth one. When I was a product manager at Ciba-Geigy, one of us in the US, because I started with Ciba-Geigy in France. I went to business school in the US. They brought me back to Paris, and then after 4.5 years in France, they sent me to their US operations in headquarters in New Jersey. But then I was a product manager, and I was a product manager for a product called Transderm Nitro. It was transdermal nitroglycerin that was approved for the treatment of what's called unstable angina, when patients have blockage in the coronary artery, so they don't quite have a heart attack. Generally, it's a precursor to a heart attack, but then their arteries are blocked by cholesterol and atheroma plaque, and then the blood flow to their heart muscle, their myocardium is impaired, and then they have chest pain, and they have difficulties breathing and extending efforts. So anyway, so we have this product which was actually, at that time, somewhat revolutionary. It was actually the very first transdermal therapeutic approved by the FDA. So our patch, so it was a patch that the patient would put on their skin, and it would stick for half a week, so they would have to change it every other week. And it was really elegant, very small, very thin. There was a competitor who had another patch which was very big, not as elegant. But our sales reps were complaining that our competitor was supposedly giving away a lot of samples, and then the sample cabinets in the doctor's office were filled with our competitor's sample, and then the reps kept asking for more samples. And I figured out that the key reason why this was happening, and then it was hurting the growth of the sales of our own product, which was better than the other one, but it was creating issues, that actually we were ourselves giving away so many samples that actually was impacting negatively the sales of the product. And as the sales reps, and there were like 354 sales reps selling the product in the US. And I went to talk to them to one of our meetings, and I said I did this analysis, and they keep asking for more samples, and I told them I'm going to give you fewer samples. And because the reason is that since our patch was much smaller, it looked like we were giving fewer samples, where actually we were giving more samples because the box was much smaller. So it was as silly as this. And actually, I was right in my analysis, in the sense that when we did that, the sales started to go up. Okay. However, the lesson that I learned is actually the sales reps were really unhappy about me. Some of them wanted to kill me. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, they really were very unhappy about me. So, and they made a note to my manager and all that stuff. And then obviously after a quarter or two, when the sales started going up, then they liked me again. But anyway, but the lesson I learned there was that being right is just the beginning in an organization. Of course, you have to be right, or try to be right, do the right analysis to make the right decisions, but that's not enough, far from being enough. You have to convince the people that your decision is the right one. And that's much tougher. And that's something you don't learn much in business school. I mean, you learn probably a little bit of it, but that's something that you don't. Actually, when I went to SCP, we didn't spend that much time on that. We spent a lot of time on analyzing, mathematics, doing great reports, analytical skills, but a little less on selling your ideas and also convincing other people that your ideas were the best ones or were right. So I did learn that. So I went through all this as an example because it was a big lesson for me, because I just realized that being right is not enough, far from being enough. I mean, it's generally the case in a lot of situations in your life, but in the business for sure, it's not enough. And especially if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a successful leader, you want people to follow you. You need to lead by influence and by getting commitments of other people to follow you. And then so that means you have to spend a lot of time explaining your decision. And that's something that, because they might seem obvious to you, but they're not obvious to the people that are going to have to implement those decisions. That's why at BioMarin, we spend a lot of time communicating with our employees, a lot of time. We have a lot of different venues and today with Zoom and videos and podcasts, there are many media you can use to do that. But that was clear. One of the first lessons I received when I was in middle management in my career. So that was actually not a huge. I mean, there was a setback personally, but not a huge one in terms of business. I mean, other thing is that so other mistakes I've done. One of the mistakes we did at BioMarin was to in-license to acquire a product from another country. It was a Dutch company for a disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a terrible disorder that only affects boys, where they lose. It's a degenerative disease where their muscles degenerate, and eventually they end up in a wheelchair by age 12 generally, and they die also in their mid to late 20s because all their muscles stop functioning, including the muscles that help them breathe, and obviously generally they die of cardiopulmonary insufficiency. So anyway, so statistically that was a fantastic product for us to acquire. Absolutely, it's orphan disease, rare disease, very severe disorder, huge unmet need. So we acquired these products knowing that, and we had not developed that product. The product was actually developed by a company that was called Prosensa, which they had an agreement with GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, a very large pharma company. And actually GSK developed the product. And I believe they made a few mistakes developing the product, but anyway, it's the first time we acquired a product that we actually did not develop ourselves. But because all the other products we have developed ourselves, and actually all the products that we got into phase 3 ended up being acquired. We have one that's waiting approval now, but we hope to get approval. So this one we acquired Bienaime. The phase 3 had been done, and it was controversial, some of the data anyway. The mistake we made was to acquire this product because we had been so successful until we acquired that product in getting all the products we developed approved, all of them, by the FDA, that we became a little too sure of ourselves, that we thought, well, even if the data is a little controversial, we think we can convince the regulatory authorities, the FDA and the European Medical Agency, that actually this is a product that should be approved. And we became overconfident in our abilities to get products approved when even the clinical database was not perfect. And we got turned down by the FDA. So obviously that was not pleasant, that was a mistake. But again, we learned again from our mistake here in several ways. But one of them was that we become a little bit careful, clearly, in terms of acquiring products that we had never since then acquired a totally ready-made product. We acquire a lot of very early stage products that basically become ours. So we develop ourselves. And two, actually, we learned a lot though by doing this about the Duchenne muscular dystrophy disease, patient community, the market, and using the technology we acquired. Actually, we have developed a second generation products, an oligonucleotide, for which we actually have now really exciting animal data, preclinical data, and which shows much better efficacy than the product that we had acquired in terms of the ability to induce the myocytes, the muscle cell of the patients to express dystrophin, which is what's missing or defective in those patients. And we are going to file an IND next quarter, in the second quarter, or by the summer, by June, and we should be treating our first patients in the fourth quarter of this year. And I think this is going to be a super exciting product that's going to be making a huge difference for this patient community. So anyway, that's the learning from your mistake. It's like you learn and then you don't, instead of going home and crying, you say, well, what can I do about what I learned? And then we developed a new product.
Thank you so much for sharing those examples. Never easy to share one's mistakes. So this is truly leading by example. Also, such a great advice I will definitely take with me. Being right is not enough. Let's move now to another section. I will give you one word and want to get your reaction.
Oh my God, I'm not very good at that. Okay, let's try it.
Let's go. Leadership.
Leadership. So leadership, I would say, is something that I did not really understand when I was younger. I mean, I would say really much younger. I was in high school. Or, as you know, also even the concept of leadership is really an Anglo-Saxon American concept. I mean, there is no real good translation in French, or if you know it, you let me know. That's why it's definitely a concept that was a little vague to me until I got older. But I would say it's so leadership. It's getting, it's so not only making the right decisions and then convincing other people to follow your advice, your decision, and to actually make things better in general, whether you're in politics or you are in medicine, is to improve the condition of people in the world and around you, and to convince them to do the right thing and to make sacrifices at time to achieve a greater good. That to me, that's the definition of leadership, and of course that takes a lot of skills and a lot of efforts, and that generally only works if you have respect for the people that you're trying to lead, and also if you have, I would say, a goal or an general objective that is a positive one, instead of a negative. So unfortunately, actually, there are in history people that were leaders in the sense that they moved countries, and we have a recent example of that happening right now in Ukraine. So, which is not always for the greater good, and that's why it's important to me for a leader to eventually display leadership characteristics when they're looking for a positive objective. Let me give you an example here, because I think that's an example of leadership that in which I was very personally involved. So actually, I mentioned to you that the tree of life that we have was something that we came up with thanks to our relationship with the patients. And one of them, I say the first one that put their padlock on the tree of life was Isa. She's still alive. It's a patient called Isabelle Boissoya. And a few years ago, although we had known her since she was like 7 or 8, because she got she was one of the first patients to receive one of our products in a clinical trial. She actually was facing imminent, because she was from South America, she was facing imminent deportation from the U.S. Because of some government snafu and the elimination of a government program, federal government program in the U.S. that allows immigrants to stay in the United States while undergoing life-saving medical treatment. So she came into the U.S. Obviously, she didn't have a work. She was a kid, so she didn't have a work visa. She didn't have all the paperwork for immigration, but she had the paperwork that actually she was not an illegal immigrant. She came to the U.S. because she was about to receive life-saving medication, which was one of the BioMarin products. But now all of a sudden, because of some administrative red tape, wrong decisions, she faced deportation, and I knew that if she was sent back to South America, she would not be treated there, and she could potentially die. So what happened is that I worked directly I'm on the board, the board of administration of the Biotech Industry Organization, and also the Pharmaceutical Research Manufacturer Association. But so I work directly with the bio leadership, and I pulled together a coalition of biotech CEOs around the countries, hundreds of them, to sign a letter to the U.S. federal administration that at the time was critical. We think it's absolutely critical that this change in the regulation be eliminated because it's critical that patients receiving life-saving therapies be allowed to remain in the United States for obvious reasons. So BioMarin, I was very personally involved. We were one of many concerned groups, including politicians. We had some celebrities getting to the campaign, caring individuals. We provided all BioMarin employees, and we have over 3,000 of them now, information on how they could support Isabelle, including the signing a change.org petition. We asked them to share the change.org petition with others, with friends and families. We shared a celebrity Instagram video about Isabelle. So again, and that came from the fact that we had a long history with her, and we just could not abandon her because of some administrative ineptitude here. Because Isabelle came from Guatemala in 2002, where she was actually just seven, I remember now. And she took the risk to take our drug, which was an experimental drug, to actually move science forward. And I would say that by taking that risk, and she uprooted her entire family, I mean, it was really her mother's decision, but they decided to participate in the trial, and she paves the way for other MPS 6 patients to receive treatment in the future because the product is now on the market. It's been on the market for over 15 years. And now Isabelle was so touched by all this, she's devoting her life to helping rare diseases patients herself. And she now advocates for rare disease patients in the US. So I guess that's an example of leadership, because obviously, what can I say, that's a government decision, change, nothing we can do about it. Goodbye, Isabelle. Well, we didn't do that. And then now she stayed in the country. We actually turned around the federal decision. We turned it around by this campaign. And it impacted not only Isabelle, but a lot of patients with rare disease in the US that were receiving life-saving therapies from any biotech organization. I guess that's leadership, for my definition.
What about purpose?
Purpose. But I mean, my reaction, like, if you don't have any purpose in life, I mean, you're already dead, as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, unfortunately, you need to have a purpose in life. You need, as I say, you need to know why you wake up in the morning. But even if not working anymore, I mean, you either your purpose is to raise your children, to care for your family, to care for your older parents. But you absolutely need to have a purpose. It's fundamental for life and for life in society in general. Otherwise, if you're a bunch of people with no energy, no desire, no purpose, it's not gonna be very good for very long, as far as I'm concerned.
And finally, spread love in organizations.
Okay, so no, that's a very important one. So maybe a few examples of this. So I've talked about BioMarin having true love and devotion to our patients. So I would say we also care deeply for each other. I mean, BioMarin employees. So as you might know, in 2017, a few years ago, there were some pretty significant wildfires in Northern California, actually just north of San Francisco, in Napa County, Napa Valley, world renowned for their wine and Sonoma. Because our manufacturing facilities are in Novato, which is a little north of our headquarters, and 2 exits after Novato, where we are, is Napa Valley exit. So we are pretty close to that. And so what happened is that there were really some pretty nasty fires, and we had 4 of our employees, lose their homes because they were totally burned out to the ground, nothing left. And 200 or so of our employees were evacuated because they lived in the Napa and Sonoma County areas, and they had to evacuate their homes with very little notice. So it was pretty disruptive. So our HR human resource group, reached out to the 300-400 employees overall that were affected to check on how they were doing, and we provided support and temporary housing to many of them, over 100 and 200 of them, paid for by BioMarin, because they not all of them lost their house, only 4 of them entirely, but some of them could not go in their house for several weeks. We informed employees that we had some of our own lose their homes. We would provide a way to provide financial support, and we raised around $50,000 from our own employees for these employees, on top of all the help that the corporation provided them. So, and we say this is what we are as a company. We come together in times of need. So, on top of it, we gave each employee that was affected by the fires, because they had to be displaced, I think around $7,000 check with no strings attached. This is here for you to help, deal with the situation. On top of the fact we provided temporary housing. So that was a big call of outpouring and love, and I think it did a lot to continue to motivate, employees to work for BioMarin, knowing that we care for them. There's also what I would call a little everyday love that comes with the day-to-day interaction we have with each other on the workplace, although it's been more difficult with the pandemic because many of us had to work from home for several months. But I start, as I said earlier, with the assumption that everyone is coming from a good place, and that giving people the benefit of the doubt when there is a conflict is very important. It is also being kind and thoughtful, which can be as simple as asking about how your colleague is doing, getting a coffee for someone, or asking about kids, pets, and hobbies. All those things are very important, which again, have been a bit more difficult in a Zoom world, but now we're coming back to the office slowly and surely, so it's going to get easier. But this was very difficult for everybody, as you know, the pandemic. So I would say it's important to understand that expressing love in the workplace can be hard to do at first, because it makes the person who's expressing love vulnerable. Because you may open up to someone and they make a joke of it. That has unfortunately happened a lot. So that doesn't feel good to the person who just opened up about something personal. Life was messy because life is messy, and life was messy before the pandemic, and the pandemic made it even worse. I mean, made the life even messier than it ever was. So people are suffering through the pandemic, and the workplace needs to address that, because you don't leave your suffering at the door when you come to work. You don't. You're a human being. So it's important that people feel cared for at work. So I'm reminded of a quote from Maya Angelou, who is an American poet, novelist. And she says something like, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did for them, often, unfortunately. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think she's probably right. There is something there. And the amazing thing about love and love in the workplace, that's the topic of our conversation, is an infinite free resource. And they will have a tremendous impact on people and on the business and the bottom line. It does.
Thank you. So inspiring. Any final word of wisdom for healthcare leaders around the world?
Yeah, I would say this whole thing about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, unfortunately, there have been a lot of politics attached to it in the US, which I'm not a fan of. So I've taken my people at BioMarin and say, we are going to have a DEI initiative because it's fundamental to the success of the business and it's the right thing to do. But we want to make sure we take the politics out of it. So we do at BioMarin, we strive for a very diverse community of employees. We want the employees to feel empowered and safe to bring all perspectives and ideas on the table in their work. So our DEI programs reflect our commitment to fostering a very diverse biotech workforce, both within and beyond BioMarin. So we have recruitment initiatives for diverse new employees. We have DEI learning and development programs for current colleagues. We partner with biomedical educations around the US and other parts of the world for helping underrepresented youth to ensure that the biotech workforce continues to offer a broad spectrum of life-changing ideas today and tomorrow for many people. So, like for instance, we're proud that our global workforce reflects an equal number of women and men at nearly every half the BioMarin employees are women, 50% exactly. I mean, you would think that we really embed that. No, we didn't. Just this is the way it is. So, but we make sure that we're not, not going to change. And women represents, also 50% of all BioMarin employees, from the individual contributors to the executive directors level. 3 of our board members are women as well, for instance. Although we can make progress there because they are still a minority. So just an example. So we're committed to the journey of increasing female representation at BioMarin. We also have a whole program to increase representation for people of color. Actually, people of color represent 50% of all US BioMarin employees, from individual contributors to senior managers. And the definition, there's again a legal, unfortunately, definition in the US of people of color, which is, Black or African American, Hispanic and Latinos, Latinas, Asian and Asian American, Native Hawaiian, I think Pacific Islanders, and I think American Indians. There's a whole definition. But anyway, we have a big representation of people of color at BioMarin, and we continue to improve it because this is the world we live in, and that's the right thing to do. So we have lots of programs around that. We partner with different educational organizations around the US to provide internship opportunities for people of color in high school and college at BioMarin. And we have programs on pay equity. And starting this year, we have achieved pay equity very, very well in the US already, but we have many more employees now outside the US than the US. So we are now expanding. We're doing a lot of research for pay equity around, actually in Latin America. We have a big organization in Brazil, for instance, and we realized that that women in Brazil were, underpaid as compared to men in Brazil in BioMarin, and we said, we can't fix that overnight, but we will fix it. And I would say within a year or two, we will make sure that basically everybody at BioMarin, whether they're men or women, are paid about the same for the same position. So we also have, and that's the thing we say, we also have, that's a big thing now in the US, we have internal resource groups. So again, we want to foster a culture where all voices are heard. So we have what's called employee resource groups, or ERGs, and community resource groups that are critical to these efforts, or CRGs. So ERGs are predominantly identity-based, but CRGs are, groups of people who share common interests, and we let them organize themselves within BioMarin, and we supply, meeting rooms and all that, so that they can meet and share their example. Let me maybe one, in conclusion, because I guess we're going to run out of time here. So back to the employee love, I would say, employees are the oxygen of any company. I'm not the first person to say this, and I'm sure I'm not going to be the last, but so in business, your employees are the most important part of the company. Because if they're not happy, they don't do a good job, they're not going to deliver a good product or service to your customers. So I think about our employees as integral to the company's survival in the same way as we think about human survival. So we all know that there are 3 things that humans need to survive: oxygen, water, and food. After that, you need other stuff, but this is the basic stuff. If you don't have it, you're dead. So I understand that human cannot go much more than 3 minutes without oxygen. So it's about 3 days without water, and it's about 3 weeks without food. So obviously, oxygen is the number one priority. So the employees are the oxygen. Our customers, the patients, and the physicians are the company's water, and our investors, they've been our food. Although now company is profitable now, so we don't need to raise money with investors. Although we need to get their support so that stock price goes in the right direction. But as you can say, if you don't have the oxygen, the other two don't matter. So again, BioMarin employees are the oxygen that we need to make a big difference to our patients. I would say the motto of the company, we make a big difference in a small patient population, but we really change their lives. So again, the patients are at the heart of what we do, and I would say our groundbreaking science. I mean, we are leaders in genetics and genomics. I can tell you that, and it's amazing what's happening in this space. So we want to leverage our deep understanding of genetics and genomics to develop transformational drugs and healthcare products that will improve the way that the patients feel, the way they function, and the way they obviously survive.
Thank you so much, JJ, again for your time as such an inspiring discussion.
Okay, my pleasure. It was great to answer your questions and get to know you. I wish all of you involved in this project the best. That's a great idea. I'm sure we'll be successful, and hopefully it will generate other ideas, and this will grow into something.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. We have such an important responsibility as leaders of today to plant the seeds for the leaders of tomorrow. Connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com and subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.